Okay, in our next video for the 2008 Boxster, I thought I might go over some of the differences between the 987 and 986 Boxsters, since we just happen to have one of each in the garage right now. So our subject car, this 2008 Boxster, represents the 987 series, which was introduced in 2005. This is a base level 987 with the 2.7 liter flat 6 engine and a 5-speed manual transmission. Then this speed yellow car here is a 2004 Boxster S, which represents the final year of the 986 series. This is the S model, which has the 3.2 liter flat 6 engine and a 6-speed manual transmission. This car is actually sold and it's going home to its new owner tomorrow morning. So I wanted to do this comparison before this car leaves tomorrow morning. First of all, let's take a look at the cosmetic differences between the two. Both have similar profiles. On the 987, you'll see a difference in the side intakes. The door handles have been revised on the 987 model, and the mirrors have a slightly different design. So we see the intakes on the 986 are a bit different, the door handles are different, and the mirrors are a bit different. So the front of the car is where you see the most significant difference. So the headlights on the 986 were a controversial feature back in the day because they incorporated both the headlight, the fog light, and the turn signal all into one unit, which was essentially a cost-saving measure which was shared with the 911s of the same vintage. So if we look at the headlights on the 986, or 987, excuse me, you can see a much sleeker design, which still includes the headlight and the turn signal, but the fog lights have been moved down to the bumper. Then at the rear of the cars, here is the tail light on the 986. The tail light on the 987 was revised slightly, not quite as bulbous as the 986 tail light. And then if we look inside the trunk, we'll see a few minor differences. The trunk itself is about the same. And on both cars, you've got the fill access for both oil and coolant. But on the 986, you also have an actual dipstick. If we move to the 987, we'll see in this little compartment here, we have the same oil and coolant fill, but there's no physical dipstick in this car. This car has an electronic oil level indicator in the gauge cluster just below the tachometer. So then if we move back to the front of the cars, we'll see a couple differences in the front. The most noticeable difference is in the 986, we actually have a spare tire. It's a space saver, but it is a spare. Then if we move back to the 987, you will see no spare. Porsche moved to what they called a mobility kit back in this era, which is actually behind this little panel down here. You can see your little compressor down here, your can of sealant and so forth, then your tool kit and your tow hook. And then you've got a couple extra storage compartments in here too as well. So then the other big difference was the interior. The 986 interior was widely criticized for having kind of a down market feel. The door panels were kind of plasticky. Interior. This one's a little more special because it's got the body color center console in it. But that's pretty typical 986 interior. Moving back to the 987, this interior was completely redesigned and also substantially upgraded materials. The window switches were actually moved to the door, which makes a little more sense. And while most of the interior finishes were upgraded pretty significantly, there's one minor exception, which is the climate control buttons. These black rocker switches here are notorious for the finish rubbing off. But in this car, they're remarkably pristine, which is kind of unusual. Okay, so let's take a look at the numbers. So to put things in perspective, the 2004 Boxster S had a 3.2 liter flat six and a 6-speed manual transmission. The 08 Boxster base, a 2.7 liter flat six with a 5-speed manual. The 08 Boxster is slightly less heavy, 2877 pounds compared to 2911. It's about a ½ inch longer than the 986. On the horsepower side, the Boxster S has 13 more horsepower, more torque, but when the rubber meets the road, if you look at the 0 to 60 times, they're almost identical. 5.7 seconds for the 04S compared to 5.8 for the base 08. And top speed of 164 versus 160. And I think this is really a great example of how Porsche continually improves and enhances its cars over the years, and to the point where a buyer of this base 2008 Boxster essentially got the same level of performance as an 04 S. And I think that makes a strong case for these base level 987 Boxsters and why they're such great cars today. Although Porsche made quite a few of them, you really don't see base 987 manual Boxsters come on the market very often. I guess the people who own them really appreciate them and just don't want to give them up. Anyway, thanks for watching, and be sure to look for our next video.